Hello, so our next little odds and ends project is to create a table or a work table for the Bridge City Tools JMPV2 Pro. If you don't know what that machine is, I'll take you over here and show you. This is the JMPV2 Pro. It is basically a table saw where the saw is a blade similar to that you would find in a Japanese pole saw. There's the saw blade right here. It's installed at a little bit of an angle so that as you put your wood on the fence and slide it across the blade, it makes a cut. And then for each successive cut, you turn this crank handle and that raises the blade up a little bit. And you make another cut until you've cut through or until you've cut to the depth that you want to cut. The neat thing about it is you can tilt the blade in either direction. It has stops. You can set for different angles, for repeatability. These table pieces up here are totally adjustable, so you can create miters. So you can create bevels and miters and all kinds of interesting things. There's lots of other attachments. There's a higher precision fence with stops on it and micrometer adjustments and things like that. There's a lot of extras you can buy with this. One of the things that they sell is a table that's designed to work with this machine, and their table sets the machine at an angle similar to the way I have it here. And so what this enables is kind of an easier stroke from front to back. It's more ergonomic. These pieces that I have left over from actually this table over here that you can see, which was created for my wife to do her packaging and shipping on her eBay business. These pieces were left over, so it's always great to use leftover scraps, drops from another project to make something you need. And of course, this isn't fancy in any way, but it's going to be a table that will support this machine and I'll get to use it more frequently. So the leg stock what I chose to use for leg stock, I was only able to get 3 pieces out of it. So here's my idea for making the legs. I've got this drawing, which you can see. I'm going to put 2 legs in the back of the table at 45 degrees, and then I'll put one leg kind of centered in the front. And I'm hoping that this will be stable enough. Now, I've gone back and forth in my mind of how I want to make the mortises for these big leg stock here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Shaper Origin. So I'm going to be a little lazy. I was thinking about boring them out with the drill press and then chopping them square with a chisel. But I also thought just the layout and alignment would be awfully tricky. So I'm going to use the Shaper Origin and bore the holes down at least a 1/4 of an inch or so. I might go all the way. I haven't decided yet. Probably clear out a lot of the waste once I get the holes located, or the mortises located and outlined. I might drill out a lot of the excess waste with the drill press. We'll just kind of play it by ear and see how it goes. Okay, so I've been working with the Shaper Origin to create a design for the mortise that will receive the tenon end of the leg that'll go in this table. First I tried to create the design on the Shaper itself, which it can create simple shapes, but since I want to skew the mortise at a 45-degree angle, it doesn't allow you to do that, or it doesn't have the tools built in to do that. If I wanted it square to the edges of the workpiece, I could have designed it right on the tool. So the Shaper company also has what's called Shaper Studio, which allows you to do designs in their online platform. And luckily, that allowed me to turn the rectangle 45 degrees and automatically puts the file in my Shaper account, where the Shaper origin can find the file, retrieve it, and allow me to place it digitally where I want it on my workpiece and then make the cuts. So I'm going to show you here what I've done so far. Making the first cut with the Shaper origin. And what I did was I only went down 1/4 of an inch, and I think I'm going to come back with the drill press and drill out most of the waste and then just chisel it, because I want to do some chiseling. So I'm going to kind of show you the process here. I don't know, whenever you try and video a screen of some sort, it often kind of looks like things are flashing or whatever, but I'm going to show you the process of bringing in the file, because the other leg has to skew at the opposite angle. So we'll go back to design and we'll go to import. And so here's the one I've already brought in. Now I want to bring in this one. Okay. And then what I want to do is put the anchor point right here, which allows me to anchor it on my design. And then I want to come off the edge a certain amount, and I don't know how well the camera can see the board. I guess it can see it right there. Okay. So I want to come in the Y direction 2.5, and in the X direction 2.5 to the left inches. So let's come up Y 2.5 inches. And you can see it's starting to not see the tape. See a little flashing red line up at the top right? Might have a problem with that. .5, and then let's go 17 minus 2.5 is 15, is 14.75. So we're going to go to the left. So it reads 14.75. The other thing you can do is you can type those dimensions in if you want to. So we're going to hit the green button right here on the tool, and now the design is placed. And lastly, what we'll do is we want to go to cut, and you can see it shows like a feed direction with the little dashes moving around, and we want to change the first cut to 0.12. We'll do 2 passes, 0.12 and then 0.25. I can't hold the camera and do the cut, so I'll bring you back when I'm done. It's not that exciting, and there's lots of video of this exact thing going on. Oh, on the internet and on YouTube. So the other thing we want to do is change this cut from outside to inside, because we want to be inside the line. So now you can see the feed direction, because it's anticipating the router tool movement. The feed direction is now going in the other way. So I'm going to go ahead and make the cut, and we'll come back. Okay, so here's an interesting factoid. for you all. The second outline is cut. And what I wasn't sure of, when you put the tape down, the Shaper tool creates what it calls a workspace. Because this tape with the domino patterns on it has enough non-repeating pattern for it to make a unique identification of itself and where it is on your workpiece. And what I wasn't sure of is that when I turn the machine a full 180, whether it would still recognize this workspace, as it calls it, as the same workspace because it's viewing it from the other side, but it does. So this same tape will work and I won't have to create a new workspace. The next step is to create this rectangle, and I'm going to do it on the tool because this rectangle does not have to be skewed at a 45-degree angle. So I'll do create and rectangle. The width is 5.3, 5.3125. The height is 1.0. I'm not going to do a radius. I am going to choose that corner as the anchor, and then where I want to place it, actually I want to choose, this corner as the anchor. And where I want to place it would be, let me get my paper, 27 minus 3.75 is 23.25 will be the Y. So again, move it to 23.25. And the X, I want to be 5.97. I don't know if I can do that. Looks like I can only go in 1/4 inch increments. Maybe I can type it in. 5.969. I don't know if it'll let me do that. Yes, it will. So it's placed. And move down a little bit and change it to cut. We're going to cut on the inside. It's already got that. We're already Z-touched. We're ready to go. It's that simple. Now the one thing I'm not sure of is, am I going to crash into my clamp I have here? And yes, I am. So I need to move my clamp before I get started. And again, I apologize that I can't show you, but basically you just, once you turn the router on and it extends the bit, you just trace these dotted lines and you're kind of done. Oh, the other thing we're going to do is start out with a 0.12 depth, or even 0.125 to be halfway, and we'll come back when we're done. Hello there. We have our top piece mortises complete. As you can see, 3 mortises for our 3 legs. And I'm getting ready. I'm going to mark the depth of the mortise with a marking gauge. And what I'm going to do is drop the cutter to my tabletop, and that's the depth that we need cut on the tenons. Now these things have markings on them, but they're so faint I can never read them. I guess you have to read this side actually. Just kind of curious. Yeah, right about 1.5 inches, which is the thickness of this piece. So we'll go ahead and get our mark on here, and the way you do this is kind of a rolling motion. To get a nice crisp mark. And I'm not going to make you watch me do that whole thing. The other thing that we need to do is set up, I've got a 1/2 inch dado stack in the table saw, so I'll have to make roughly 3 cuts or so to make my tenon. And I'm going to use Woodpecker's 6-in-1 stop gauge to set the dado height. I bought this tool. It looked really handy and cool. I don't use it for anything else. It's pretty expensive and I wouldn't recommend buying it, but it kind of works for this. I've got it set to 1/4 inch, and I need to take off a little bit less than 1/4 inch, so I'm just going to set the blades a little bit below this setting. Not very scientific, but it is what it is. So come over here and we'll get the apex of the blade to be just below. And that's going to do it. Lock that setting in. And if we're tight, you know, I'll probably just clean it up with a chisel or with a router plane or something like that, or a block plane even, just to, you know, fit the tenon to the mortise. So let me go ahead and finish marking these, and we'll come back and cut and check a fit. Well, we're all set up, and I kind of made a big deal about marking everything with the marking gauge, but what I decided to do is set up this thin rip guide, and this isn't kind of the way it's meant to be used, but this is setting me a guide so that I can just slide my board up against it and get these cuts lined up and cut fairly quickly. Unfortunately, the thickness on these boards needs to be taken down just under 1/4. The width for the mortise needs to be taken back down just over 1/4. So I'll do all the long ways passes, and then I'm going to have to reset the blade and do the others. So go ahead and get these cuts done. I put my hand kind of close to the blade there one time too. Be careful not to do that. You can get focused on your cuts and sort of get a little bit too comfortable with with everything. Okay, so I did the first one off camera just to make sure there weren't any complications, and it worked fine, but as you can see, I'm having to stand this up in a tall orientation, which makes it a little bit harder to manage, but it'd be nice if there was some sort of a clamp or something to hold it, but there isn't. But with a little bit of care, it worked just fine, so here we go. Okay, so I've got some cleanup to do. The mortises, the corners of the rectangular mortises are rounded somewhat because it was done with a router, and I thought about chiseling them square, but because it's so deep, it's an 1.5 inch deep mortise, that I thought it might just be easier to round the corners on the tenons. So I'm just going to clean these up a bit with a chisel and round the edges, and then we'll do a test fit and glue everything together. So I'm taking the corners off of these tenons with the chisel. It's not precise, but the pine is super soft and it comes off real easy. And what I'm doing is just rounding them over so they fit through the mortise. And I'm not rounding off the very face because I'm going to let that smush in the joint, and that way on the surface it'll look more precise and less chance of a gap. So this is quick and easy, and it's amazing after just taking off a little bit how easy it slides into comparing where it wouldn't go in at all. Prior to just taking off just this little bit, just enough. And there's probably other ways that you could do this to round this off. You could use a file. You could even use, you know, one of your powered sanders if you wanted to. I just think you have so much more control this way, and if you have a nice sharp chisel, it doesn't take very long at all. The other thing you want to do is any wood that curls up, you want to kind of clean that off the shelf so that it'll sit all the way into the mortise. Because the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim these to height from this shelf. That way, hoping that they'll all be the same height. Now, this would not go in before. Huh. And it still won't go in. Okay. The other two behaved better. So we'll just take off a little bit more. Like I said, trim off those curls so that they're not interfering with it seating all the way. And really, that's all you need to do. Okay. Second test. This one's a bit tight. I may not have pushed down on the surface of the table well enough with this one. It just feels a bit tall, or thick actually. It's not the corners grabbing. So I'm just going to take the slightest, hardly anything off of here. To clean this up. As you can see, I'm just super lightly, almost scraping. In fact, a scraper might work well too. Unfortunately, all my scrapers are dull and I haven't taken the time to go back and sharpen them. So, let's see if that did the trick. Oh yeah, it's still a little bit tight, but it'll go in. I don't want to put a tight one in this one because I've got a glue seam right there and it's going to tend to press that seam apart. The two angled ones I don't think will have nearly as much trouble with one that's a little bit tight. But at any rate, come back in a little bit and we'll glue everything together. Okay, here's what we've got going on here. We have our dog hole pins keeping this board square. We've got this stop against the tenon shoulder. This is the shortest of the three boards, so I'm going to trim this flush, then we'll line the other two one at a time up with that stop and cut them. They should all be the same length from the shoulder. Then we'll glue everything together. Okay, I don't know if you could see the plumes of dust in the air. I never really was happy with the dust collection on this Craig saw. It's an inexpensive saw comparative to other track saws, and the dust collection to me is just terrible. It could also be the fact that I'm using a shop vac. If any of you have the Craig saw and you have better luck with dust collection, can you let me know if you're using a shop vac or if you're using a more proper dust collector, dust extractor, similar to the Festool or the 3M, or I think Bosch makes one. I don't know who else makes them, but let me know. Be interested to know. So we'll get set up and we're going to glue these in, and I'm not going to clamp them. They're going to fit tight. They're going to fit square, and we'll just glue them in and be done. Okay, so we're getting ready to glue everything together. I'm going to use quite a bit of glue on these. I want these to bond very, very well. So I'm going to glue both the mortise and the tenon and push them together. I've already test fit everything. Everything fits. So it's just a matter of spreading the glue on. I like these silicone brushes. They clean up nice and certainly last longer than some of those little throwaway brushes you can buy by the 10-pack or by the dozen or whatever. Those are great for smaller, if you're doing a smaller joint, but this joint's, as you can see, is pretty big. So this brush is perfect. Other than that, nothing tricky about this. I'm going to I'm not going to use any fasteners. I really don't believe any are going to be necessary. And I'm almost thinking, yeah, I think what I'll do is I will put some in the mortise, but I'm not going to go all the way to the surface because I'm pretty sure it's going to push down anyway. So as I push the piece in, it's going to push that glue on through with it. So I don't believe getting anal about full coverage is worth the effort in any way. Okay. Let's take a look and see which face I want to see if I'm ever looking underneath the table, which I probably won't, but well, that glue sure made it a lot tighter. But she's in. 1 out of 3. And I thought I put a pretty big glob in there, but I used most of it up already. There's another big glob. And you don't need to watch all this. We'll just come back when we're done.